Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Fazeli Cellars is a state-of-the-art winery that offers a combination of stunning architecture, breathtaking scenery, beauty, and the finest selection of 20 varietals of boutique wines the region has to offer. Our guest today built his career as a product marketing and entrepreneur, and he is the founder of the international infomercial and retail marketing company BJ Global, which created the best-selling Chimero product line. After passing this company on to his two daughters, our guest rekindled his long-buried dream of having his own winery. It was his life's most challenging endeavor and juggling seemingly hundreds of issues at once instead of just simply retiring like most people would. I'd like to welcome the Beyond 50 radio program today, owner of Fazeli Cellars, our guest, BJ Fazeli. BJ, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Good morning, sir.
So you're somebody who just doesn't seem to quit, do you? You just kind of find one endeavor, you go, you put your all into it, make it successful, and you move on to something else. Tell us about your drive, how this all started for you.
Well, I always thought that when they put me 6 foot under, that would be the only time that I quit. So as a child, my mother always told me never quit in life and, keep on trying until you succeed. So I'm an immigrant moving over here after the revolution in Iran. In 1978, I moved to England, and then from there, after living for many years over there, moved to the United States with my family, and just continued with my passion, which was selling and manufacturing and producing commercials and acting on TV, selling on QVC, selling in retail, etc., etc. And I always wanted to build something that would leave my legacy behind. And I had a passion towards wine, which basically was a hobby at the beginning. And my wife says that it was basically a passion getting out of hand, or a hobby getting out of hand. And today we are proud to be the owner of Fazeli Cellars, and which is a state-of-the-art winery, and we have achieved quite a number of recognitions from domestic and international wine competitions. And we're based in Temecula in Southern California, the heart of the wine country. And, it's just business as usual. You just never give up. You carry on.
Now, 1989 is about the time that you started launching, yourself into the arena of doing infomercials. And, a lot of people might probably pick and say, what was it about your, call it marketing savvy that made you successful in these endeavors?
Well, you see, I always was interested in retail segment, but in the old days, you had to just go and negotiate with the buyer at any of these main chain stores or even individual mom and pops, and then try to persuade them to buy your product. In 1988, 89, it was the time that President Reagan basically freed the airtime, and the new generation of the infomercials. And then we started with a product that was a car polish. It was, if you remember, Ori and subsequently color code, the car polish that came in the color of your car. So if you have a red car, we give you a red car polish. And if you have a white car, we give you a white car polish. The same concept as you put on your shoes now for your cars. And the car polishes was very successful, and we realized with the power of advertising on TV, you can actually create that demand and go into the retail. And that's how it started, and we were just looking at a little bit, if you like, outside of the box and coming up with different products that came on the market, and quite a few of them were very successful. Until we created the line of product called Chimero, that was about the body shapers and, hardy wraps and also the curve control jeans, etc., etc. And it was basically looking good and slimming down, if you like, by putting these outfits on and getting into a better feel and going out and enjoying yourself.
Now, a lot of times I'm sure you've heard questions such as, what was it that your infomercials did that actually grabbed people to, take action that, made you successful in what you did, as though there's a secret. But it seems to me that really it just comes to hard work, persistence, and just realizing what it is you want and going after it until you get there. It sounds pretty simple enough.
It sounds pretty simple, but at the same time, you just have to have that vision and look for the products that are appealing to the mass, and the reputation of the product, the performance of the product is something that made repeat customers and came back, and they created that demand, and we managed to put them into retail. And the consumers were happy, and that's really the bottom line. Keep your customers happy and make sure you produce a good product, and people just love you.
Now, how often in all the years that you've been doing what you're doing, when it comes to customer service, do you hear people basically, they render the lip service, but that truly just isn't there?
Well, often enough, but at the same time, when you are coming across that satisfaction, I mean, we used to do a lot of trade shows, and really and truly at these trade shows, because you're face-to-face with the customer, you really see the genuine reaction. That the customer comes and says, you know what, I used this product on my car, or I wore these jeans, and they are the best, the most comfortable jeans that I have ever worn. And that was really the satisfaction that you get. I mean, I do the same thing right now with the wine. When the customer comes there and really has that experience, because wine is more about experience rather than drinking. And when you have that experience, that you really embrace the view, and then you have that palate of yours, talking to you and telling you how much you are enjoying the wine and how satisfied you are. And people stand there and tell me, you really make a good wine in here. And I say, I don't need to take the credit because I'm not the winemaker. I'm only the blender.
You hear that, folks? He's not the winemaker. He just blends it together. How difficult can that be? It's really, truly, I've been blessed with a good palate, and I've been exposed to some really good wine in my life. And what we have done at Fazeli Cellars, we have managed to get me more involved in the blending of the wines. And I always say a good fruit and a good barrel, as long as you don't really make a big mess, makes a really, really good wine. But the art of winemaking, in my book, is really about blending and bringing different varietals together that gives you those layers, and that palate that once you sip on it, you really feel, the center balance and the lingering and that satisfaction that once you really swallow the wine, then you say, that was a really, really good experience for me. Now, it's interesting because wine can really be, a risky endeavor, so to speak, especially as someone like you stepped into it really with little knowledge of how to go about it. But, again, you rolled up your sleeves, you had the persistence, you got consistent about what you were doing, you learned, you created the habits that were possible, and you just kind of engaged in it. But you discovered that one of the things that starting a winery has is there's it can be quite a bit of a financial outlay to get it all started.
It's absolutely true. The old saying goes by, if you want to make a million in wine business, you have to start with 10. And I actually learned that that wasn't true. You need a lot more than 10 to make one. So it's a long-term investment, really. But it's really a lifestyle, and it's the passion that has to drive you. It is true after a while, normally they say after 10 years, you start seeing the fruits or the results of your hard work. And that is true. This year is actually our 10th anniversary. And from the first day that we saw this piece of land, and we bought it and grading it and irrigating it and planting it and so on and so forth, it takes quite a few years and a lot of investment to basically get your vineyard even up and running, yet alone to build your winery and then build all that wine that you have to have in store and the bottling and the corking, the whole process of going from a bare land to the final bottle, it really needs a lot of investment. But as long as you have the patience and enough backing, then you can basically achieve it.
Now, it's interesting because I was just looking on your website here, and Chuck Cassidy is someone that is very well known in the wine world. I believe he's also nicknamed Two Buck Chuck.
Two Buck Chuck? How do you know him?
And a lot of people, may not know who I'm talking about here, but this guy here has probably sold more wine than probably anybody on planet Earth. And it's interesting, his niche was that he threw all the grapes together and came up with such blends as Almaden, Cold Duck, Blue Nun. I mean, these were all big sellers in the 1970s, early part of the 1980s, and it's just really amazing that here he was selling just basically wine that was kind of, affordable for just about anybody. Then I figured, if you're going to take your test up a couple of notches and really get into wine, here's at least a starting ground. You're not going to spend a whole lot of money, to do this, but you realize in time you're not spending that much more even for good wines, and it's really amazing just how much the industry has changed.
Yes, and Chuck and Elaine have been a member of our wine club for quite a few years. They are dear friend, and they are really, really, really the nicest couple you can ever come across. And Chuck always encourages me and tells me that, hey, you're on the right track. Just keep on going, and we love him. We absolutely love him, and we listen to him.
Now, tell us what goes on there at your winery besides just making wine, because as you were saying, it's more about the experience that you have more than just drinking. And certainly if anybody's been up to Oregon, they realize, we just actually hit where we've got the number one Pinot Noir in the world now.
Yes, you do.
So, it's really amazing how much it's changed. First people would think, well, it's over in France and Italy, that's where all the great wines are made, and still great wines are, but boy, I'll tell you what, it's just amazing how other countries, especially as I was just mentioning, here, I live in the Northwest, just how much it's all really changed.
It has, and Temecula is one of those new areas that not many people know about, although it's been a wine growing area, and vineyards for about 45 to 50 years. It's really and truly, it's the past 4 or 5 years that it is starting to make a name for itself, and the future is what we are most interested in. Because first of all, we have the luxury of living within almost the population of Australia, within 2 hours drive of our winery. Southern California is home to just over, I think, 20 million people down here. And within 2 hours, you can get to our place from anywhere in Los Angeles or the Valley area or Palm Springs, San Diego, Inland Empire, Orange County, etc. And the new blood that is coming to Temecula, and also some of the existing wineries, I've actually realized how important it is to produce good wine and to spend the money on the grapes, on the barrels, on the equipment that produces good wine and hire some of the really well-known people and people who want to make a name for themselves in the wine world and get them involved in their winery and come up with a product that is really worthy of its name. I remember at one of the classes I was taking at Davis, my professor said, red wine is the second most complex liquid on earth after blood. And I thought about that. And seriously, the complexity of red wine is beyond my belief that how much goes into this liquid and then becomes, with age, how it becomes. I mean, the oldest flask of wine that has ever been discovered is about 7,000 years old, according to what I have read. And it was actually discovered on the western side of Iran or the ancient Persia in a place called Haji Firuz. And what I'm trying to get more and more involved is the history and how much my background has been involved with wine throughout the history, throughout the ancient Persia. And then in today's world, when I say I'm Persian, I'm Iranian, I came out before the Shah of Iran left, and I haven't been back and so on and so forth. And they said, are you kidding? You guys drink wine over there in Iran? And I said, you'd be surprised how old the history of wine and Iran go back.
That's a very interesting point. I remember many years ago I had the opportunity and I interviewed anthropologist Wade Davis, and he was talking about the Ice Age, that as it receded, actually, Iran was that first country that began thawing out, so it was just abundant when it came to, grasslands, the whole bit. And it's funny, people, when they look at Iran and Iraq and those areas today, what they see is desert and dryness, but that wasn't the case, a few thousand years back.
Well, it still is not the case. I mean, Iran is such a vast country, and if you go to the northern part of Iran, closer to the Caspian Sea, and many parts in the northwest of it is so lush and so green. It's just there are woods and trees and so on and so forth that you can literally go and get lost in them. But at the same time, if you go to center of Iran, places like Kerman, huge deserts over there, and then the south of it is much hotter and closer to the Persian Gulf and so on. You do have the whole 4 seasons, if you like, in one day, depending which part of the country you're living in.
Now, you chose as a benchmark grape the Shiraz grape. Tell us why.
Right. Well, again, when I learned more and more about the history of Syrah or Shiraz, the DNA shows that they both are absolutely identical. They are the same. And because Shiraz is named after the fabled city of Shiraz in Iran, and a couple of the poets that we pay homage to, like Ferdowsi and Sadi and Hafiz, they were born in that place, not Ferdowsi, but Sadi and Hafiz were born in that city of Shiraz. Then, we are an ideal area for a Rhone varietal. And Shiraz actually is one of those grapes that grows in Temecula really, really well. We have our cap from Petit Syrah, etc., etc. But the Rhone varietal, we really love them and we embrace them. The Shiraz was picked simply because of the fact that it has some of my heritage in it, and the name Shiraz, and plus the fact I love Shiraz. I love that smokiness. I love that bacon. I love what the layers that you get with a good Shiraz, as long as it's made in the right way, and we try to do that for our clients.
Now, I'm on your website, and I have to say that's an astounding winery that you've actually built here. And I'm looking at the architecture, and that you can actually see the Mideastern flair to it. Tell us how you conceptually decided to design your winery the way that you did.
Well, there was a reason behind the madness. I really...
Well, if that's what madness is, I guess that's where creativity comes from. I'll tell you what, it's beautiful.
Thank you so much. Yeah, FazeliCellars.com. I mean, that's our website, and any of your listeners who want to go over there, it's Fazeli Cellars, CELLARS.com. And you can actually see, so what I was trying to do, I always wanted to bring A-frame, hexagon, and square together. And if you look at the architecture, with those colors that we have, and with the way that we have made the hallways and the porticos and so on, it's just some nostalgic background probably seated in the back of my head that always wanted to bring something like this together. And it took us about 8 years to work with our architect and put all these together, and collecting so many pictures and trying to draw and trying to come up with the concept and making him understand what we try to do. Where we are, we're surrounded by hills, and the topography is just phenomenal. Absolutely beautiful, breathtaking. So the hills have more of the iron and more reddish, and then we have got more yellow and then more earthy colors. So what we did, we tried to pick the three colors that were closest to these surroundings. And really, people used to be a madman. I used to go there like 6 o'clock in the morning and stack up these split face and then see which way the sun comes up, which way the sun goes down, and then what kind of shadow or shading you get. So by doing all this, we really have created the of the buildings in a way that we maximize on the sun. So from the sunset to sunrise to sunset, and we also accounted for the 22 degrees between the winter and the summer, the way the sun comes out and sets. So really, a lot went into this. A lot. And now we actually stand there, and as we are entering the vineyard and the entrance of the winery, the people are amazed at how pleasing to the eye and pleasing to walk. We wanted to create a sort of a village feeling, so people can come there and pick up their glass of wine and just walk around and embrace different moments, different views that they see. For the same reason, the way we built our tasting room, we didn't build a container that you come there and stare at the walls. The whole tasting room is surrounded by windows. And my wife always laughs at me. She says, "My art pieces." But no, nature gave it to us. All I had to do was just frame it. And it is like the most beautiful painting when you're standing at the counter talking to one of our wine educators and you're embracing you just take the whole environment in.
Now, you said something earlier, BJ, that I think our listeners really need to be aware of, and that is wine is an experience. And that is so true, that when you think of it from a marketing perspective, because you've been a very successful entrepreneur by marketing the right kinds of things that not only help serve people for whatever their need or their want is, but it also serves an experience as well. And as you said earlier in the program, what you want to be selling is a great experience. That's what keeps people coming back. And to put that into perspective, you seem to have applied that same philosophy into your winery, because I see that you've done everything from a Studio 54 style party to a Mad Hatter tea party. I can't imagine a better time to have a couple of glasses of wine, buy about 3 or 4 cases, and talk to people as you're pouring this wine to your friends about the experience you had at a place like a Mad Hatter tea party. It looks like a great time.
And hanging out with me dressed as a caterpillar with my hookah.
You didn't want to be the Cheshire Cat, I take it.
No, we had many Cheshire Cats. But I was the caterpillar, and I had my hookah, and I was putting lettuce in it and smoking lettuce, obviously, since I'm a caterpillar. But we were pouring wine out of teapots, and people absolutely loved it. It was really, really an experience, and they kept asking us, what's the next one? What's the theme? We need to go and start buying our, costumes and so on. So it is something that we have started over here. We have so far had 2. One was the Mad Hatter, and one was the Studio 54. Both have been very successful, but as you mentioned, yes, wine is an experience, and for that reason, what we did, even with our kitchen, with Baba John's kitchen, and Baba John, by the way, Baba means father, it means pops. You can use it as father or grandfather, and John is a term of endearment. So my kids, as they grew up, they called me Baba John. Now my grandkids call me Baba John. So for that reason, I just named our kitchen Baba John, and because I am very involved with it, and we actually have got some of our own recipes, as well as having this Mediterranean Persian fusion, cuisines over there. So the blending of the wine is my palate, and basically the food is mostly my palate. So when you put these two together, and then you experience that kebab with some wine, with the most beautiful surrounding, then that is the experience. And that is what wine is all about.
I know when I first got into broadcasting many years ago, it was interesting to write commercials for people who would want to advertise. And you learn that, the best commercials are the ones that sell you what you don't even know that you're aware of as it's being sold to, and that's the emotional benefit. And, I wanted to clue in on that, because sometimes people who may be thinking about doing this, such as starting a winery, the first thing is, getting it made, getting a good wine, getting it bottled, and then saying, well, how can I get it into stores and retail outlets? They try to think about, how do I sell the wine? And what we're clearly talking about here is you do that by selling the emotional benefit of what the experience brings you. And to give you an idea about that, up here in the Northwest, we have what's called McMiniman's pubs, okay? And what it was is these 2 brothers decided to go and find historical landmarks that more or less were pretty much going to be plowed into the ground, and they decided to sort of decorate these or re-envision these things, and they created these restaurant brew pubs, okay? So, like, for instance, one of them was an old grade school that's in the middle of Portland, and they decided to leave the school as it is, but the old classrooms became hotel rooms.
Really?
Now, most of their food are like burgers, you can probably get steaks there, and pizzas, things like that, typical pub food that really you can find just about anywhere, but you can't find it in a grade school. And believe me, when you go to this Kennedy school like I'm talking about here, you really feel like you're back in grade school. You look at these neat, artistic paintings that are on the walls. They're not, framed. They're actually painted right onto the wall, and it's just really fascinating, the kind of artistry that goes into that. Another one they have is what's called Edgefield, which was a working farm that actually had slaves working on the farm. And, we're talking decades and decades and decades ago. And that's also a place now that you can do the very same thing. You go and you enjoy great pub-style food. They also have live music. People such as Stevie Wonder have performed there, and Ringo Starr, and on and on and on. But the point being is, you can get a burger or a pizza pretty much anywhere, and probably even a better one than what these guys serve, although they're not bad, but you can't top the experience. And if you can sell that, that's where you're going to be successful.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And for the same reason, we do not sell our wines in any supermarkets. We do not sell in any restaurants. We used to be in a few restaurants and golf courses and so on and so forth up until about 2.5 years ago. And we decided, you know what, this is something that we want people to come and experience it. It's not just about how pretty the label is or they've heard about the wine and so forth, or they saw it on the shelf and they say, okay, let me try this. We wanted people to actually come in and experience it, and if they like it, then they go home and with a few bottles, with one bottle, with whatever. And that is what we are seeing more and more. They come for the first time and they are wowed. They go, this is where I want to belong. And that's why our wine club members are growing so fast. Obviously, there is no membership fee to it. It's just a commitment to buy a couple of bottles every other month, and that's it. So they come there for the experience, honestly. And when they go home, they remember the experience they had, and they open the bottle of wine and they enjoy it.
Well, I have to say it's been not only a pleasure to have you on the program, but to be able to share this kind of pearl wisdom with listeners, because sometimes a person may decide, I'd kind of like to go into business for myself, and I certainly would like a better life for myself, but then they get too caught up in the things they think are really important, not that they're any less important, but the things they believe are really important, and they forget, why did I get started doing this in the first place? What is my passion? What drives me? And I can honestly say that I can't think of a better way to retire than the way you did it.
Well, there it is. As long as you don't look at it as a business, obviously everything has to have an ROI. But as long as you are not coming into it to make a fortune and it's a passion, it's a lifestyle, then you would never regret it and you would be the happiest individual on earth.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the program today and sharing your story. And I was wondering if you could go ahead and give out that website so people can discover more.
Yes, it's Fazeli, F as in Frank, Azeli, Cellars, CELLARS.com, and we are located in Temecula on the Portola Trail in Southern California. And please come and visit us or visit us online and see what we are all about.
What's your next theme party going to be?
The next one is actually going to be our 10th year anniversary. And what we have decided is it's going to have a lot of that Persian theme to it. So we are looking at hiring a couple of different bands and also a belly dancer, and the food and the Persian carpets and so on and so forth. Our members are very excited, and we want to come up with some really, really unusual food that has got that Persian fusion in it. But after that, I don't know, there are a lot of people talking about Gatsby.
So it sounds like it'll be an experience, whereas in the words of Steppenwolf, you can go on a magic carpet ride at Fazeli Wine. Thank you again for joining us on the program. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
You betcha.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there, for joining us. Again, Fazeli Wines is where you can discover more, and you can also discover more at Beyond50Radio.com. That is the number 50. We encourage you to sign up for our weekly e-newsletter as well, so you can stay updated on what's coming up on Beyond 50 and what's happening as well. We also welcome your questions or comments. Just leave us a message and let us know what's on your mind. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Beyond 50 radio program, and remember, live your day past halfway.